find, I'd weave a magic strand of rainbow design, of rainbow design.
My way around the world at the public library, read all the songs through back along that. I'm gonna exercise my mind, I'm gonna open up my heart, I'm gonna make everything feel new. Tickle my funny bone, I'm gonna tickle my funny bone, I'm gonna back my series on, I'm gonna read all the songs through. I'm gonna put on a cape and fly to France with Captain Underpants, with Captain Underpants. With Captain Underpants, I'm gonna put on a cape and fly to France. With Captain Underpants, I'm gonna read all the songs through. Amplify my mind, I'm gonna amplify my mind. I'm gonna open up my heart, I'm gonna make every day feel new. Tickle my funny bone, I'm gonna tickle my funny bone. I'm gonna tap my series on, I'm gonna read all the songs. Was blue, and dog in his name was blue, and dog in his name was blue. Extra $5, he's a good dog too. Here's your call. Here, Blue, he's a good dog. Can you sing that with me? Here, Blue, you good dog, you. Well, I shouldered my gun and I tooted my horn, gonna catch a possum in the new round corn. Old Blue barked and went to see, he'd cornered a possum in a cinnamon tree. Here, Blue, you good dog, you. Here, Blue, you good dog, you. You know, old Daniel Boone had a dog and his name was Blue. He was a really, really good hunting dog. And one day Daniel was out hunting. They were running across a field. Out of the distance flew an arrow. It came so fast that when it hit Old Blue, it split it right in two. The front half split away from the back half, just like that. Well, Daniel was always prepared. He had some super glue in his pocket. He grabbed that super glue, he slapped a little bit on the front end, he slapped a little bit on the back hand, and he held them together. Count to 5 with me. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Blue was all back together again. He blinked his eyes. He licked Daniel's cheek. He was all back together and barely lost a heartbeat. Now the only problem was Daniel was in such a hurry that when he put them back together, he put the back end on upside down with his legs facing up and down. And you know, super glue, once it's stuck, you can't do anything about it. So that's the way Blue was for the rest of his days. And you might think that would be a problem, but it wasn't, because, see, Blue would run for a while on his front legs, and when he'd get winded, why, just flip right over on his back legs. So it didn't turn out so bad after all. That's Old Blue. I'm going to put him over here with these dog books, because I'm making him to encourage you to check out some good books about dogs. Now, if you're reading chapter books, and you want to read a good old hunting story, and parents, if you want to read one to your kids, try Where the Red Fern Grows, about a boy who has 2 hunting dogs. If you want just a plain old feel-good story, try Because of Winn-Dixie. The girl moves to a new town with her pa, and they live in a trailer. She doesn't know anybody. She feels lonely. One day she's walking around in Winn-Dixie supermarket, and she sees a stray dog running all over. And she convinces her dad to let her adopt that dog. She names him Winn-Dixie. And everywhere that dog runs off to, she follows, and she meets somebody new. Turns out real well. And if you're a 4, 5, 6-year-old, I highly recommend the Henry and Mudge series. Raise your hand if you've read any of the Henry and Mudge books. Good. They are fun, aren't they? That Mudge is the cutest dog, but boy, does he slobber. I wish I was a mole in the ground. Sing it again. Oh, I wish I was a mole in the ground. You sing it great. If I was a mole in the ground, I'd root that mountain down. And I wish I was a mole in the ground. To see if we can make up a verse to this song. All you need is an animal and a place that that animal is. Maybe what it does. Who's got an idea for an animal? Okay?
A lion.
Ooh. How about if I was a lion in the den? What would I do? What would I do if I was a lion in the den?
Hunt for food. I'll bring a zebra in.
I'd what?
I bring a zebra in.
Bring a zebra in. Well, the lion's got to eat, and that rhymes. He's got a good sense of rhyme. Let's do that one. I say go with that one. I wish I was a lion in the den. Oh, I wish I was a lion in the den. If I was a lion in the den, I'd bring a zebra in. And I wish I was a lion. What's that? Monkey, yeah. Our cousin there, looks like he could tell you a story, couldn't he? What about those guys? I don't know what story they would tell. Well, I've got a story about a monkey. It's been around a long time in a picture book version by Paul Galdone, and we've got it up here. You can check it out afterwards. So there was this monkey. He was a really curious monkey, kind of like Curious George. And he was out there one day, out on his tree, swinging around and eating a banana. And up the river came a crocodile. So he said to that monkey, he said, well, how's that banana taste? Oh, the monkey said, it's good. Crocodile said, I bet you it's not as good as a mango. The mango said, monkey, what's a mango? He said, a mango is the most delicious fruit in the entire world. He said, you haven't lived until you have tasted a mango. Well, he said, where can I get one of those? He said, well, just so happens there's an island up here a little ways, and there's a mango tree on that island. I'll take you over there. Well, you think that's a good idea? No. Probably not. Crocodile might eat a monkey. He said, you're not going to eat me, are you? He said, oh, no. He said, trust me. He said, I'm a vegetarian.
No.
It seemed pretty good for a while he was just riding along on that crocodile. I'll paint him up in just a minute. But they were riding along, going through the water. They went through the shallow part, and that was okay. He said, Mr. Crocodile, this is a pretty nice ride. Thank you for taking me along. But then they got to the deep part of the water, and when they got to that deep part, suddenly the crocodile dove down, swam along at the bottom of the stream, and that old monkey, he couldn't breathe. Finally, the crocodile came up to him. Oh, he said, Mr. Crocodile, what'd you do that for? He said, you nearly drowned me. Well, said the crocodile, first I'm going to drown you, and then I'm going to eat you. Eat me, he said. You told me you were a vegetarian. He said, I lied. He thought, and he said, Mr. Crocodile, he said, I wish I'd known that you wanted to eat me, because if I did, I would have brought my heart along with me. You what? Said the crocodile. Said, I left my heart back there in the tree. I would have brought it if I knew you were going to eat me. Well, let's go get it, said the crocodile. Oh, said the monkey, you sure you don't want to take me to that mango tree first? He said, no, let's go get your heart. Back they went, back to that island. Monkey got off, climbed up that tree. You reckon he went back to where that crocodile was? No, sirree, Bob, he said, bye-bye, Mr. Crocodile. I fooled you. I had my heart right here all the time. Give him a couple of eyes. Give him a little mouth. Kind of a big mouth, to tell you the truth. Give him a little red tongue, and he'll be ready to go. Does anybody recognize that gorilla with a kitten? A gorilla named Coco, right? A real gorilla, and Coco has had several kittens for pets. The first one's name was Ball. called her ball because she was like a ball of fur. And Coco speaks about 200 or 300 words in sign language, and when Ball died, he was really upset and told his keeper all about it, and they got him another kitten. That's Coco. But going back to the stories about trickster heroes, there's Anansi from Africa, there's Brer Rabbit from the United States in the South, and there's Cooey the guinea pig from South America, from the Andes Mountains. Lots of funny tricks that Cooey plays on Tio Antonio the fox. The very end of the book, he goes to work for the farmer, and he goes out stealing his alfalfa at night, and the farmer catches him with his sticky doll, ties him up, and he's going to cook him up the next day. But Tio Antonio the fox comes along, and he says, "Cooey, what are you doing there tied up?" He said, "The farmer wants me to marry his daughter and eat roast chicken every day." We're people.
We're people.
We're animals.
We're animals.
We're flowers.
We're flowers.
And birds in flight. I said we're people.
We're people.
We're animals.
We're animals.
We're flowers.
We're flowers.
In flight. All together now. And we're all a family under one sky. We're a family under one sky. Sing it again. We're all a family under one sky. Family under one sky. We've got light skin. We've got dark skin. We've got straight hair. Irish eat lots of potatoes, and in the old days they used to really depend on those potatoes. And this is a story about Jamie O'Rourke and the big potato. Jamie O'Rourke was the laziest man in Ireland. He would do anything to keep from working. He would sit around all day, and his wife Eileen would say, "Jamie O'Rourke, we'll have nothing to eat this winter if you don't get up and pick out the praties." But then one day, Eileen really did hurt her back, and she was laid up in bed, and Jamie had nobody to bring him his food. Well, you would think that Jamie O'Rourke would finally get up out of his bed, get up out of his chair or whatever, and go out and dig out the praties. But remember, Jamie O'Rourke was the laziest man in Ireland. To himself he says, with Eileen sick in bed, there'll be no praties. With no praties, there'll be no food. With no food, I'll starve to death. There's no telling how soon death will be knocking at my door. I'd best go and confess my sins to Father O'Malley so that I can go to heaven when I die. And so in the middle of the night, Jamie O'Rourke got up out of bed and started down the hill to the church. Well, about halfway down the hill, he heard a little singing and tapping. He come up nice and close, and he pulled back the ferns. And there, sitting in the middle of the moonlight, was a leprechaun. He was tapping on some fairy shoes, and Jamie knew just what to do. He grabbed that little fella by the coattails and he held him up. "Let me go! Let me go!" cried the little fella. "Not on your life," said Jamie. "Not until you take me to your pot of gold." "Oh, Mr. Mortal Man," he said, "I'm just starting out in the trade and I've only got 1 or 2 pieces of gold." He says, "Won't you take a wish instead?" "A wish," says Jamie, "and what would I be wishing for? Me, whose wife is sick in bed and can't get up and dig out the praties and I'm about to starve to death." "Well," says the leprechaun, "you could wish for a magic potato seed, a giant potato seed. All you'd have to do is plant it and water it a couple of times, and you'd have the great biggest potato you've ever seen in your life, and you could eat on that potato all winter long." Well, when Jamie O'Rourke got home and told Eileen what he had done, she says, "Jamie O'Rourke, you're not only the laziest man in Ireland, but you're a fool as well. What are you going to do with this so-called magic potato seed?" You'll see, says Jamie. I'll plant it, and you'll see. She did see, for in a few weeks, up out of the ground came an enormous 150 years ago in Ireland. The potatoes got a disease called the blight. It came across the ocean on the ships, and all their potatoes turned bad. You couldn't eat them.
Very, very quickly, it spread like wildfire across the Irish countryside, and it spotted and destroyed all the potatoes so quickly. If you read Nori Ryan's song by Patricia Riley Giff, as in many cases with a historical novel, you kind of get an inside feel for it. She discovers it one day when she hears this scream across the fields. And then she smells this stench, a distant neighbor discovering that all their potatoes were ruined. And the stench was the stench of that fungus coming to her. And the very next day, she discovers it in her own garden. And she and her sister look, and they can't find barely any potatoes that are not already destroyed. When she walks through the garden, this brown ooze comes out on her skirt. Well, they pick the only potatoes that they can find that are still looking good. By the time they get in the house, those potatoes too are spotted, so they begin cutting out the spots of the potato. But by the time they get the spots out and they put the rest of it in the pot with water, the water turns black with the fungus by the time it boils. And those people who depended on him couldn't find anything to eat. They were all starving to death. And they lived in houses owned by the English, who didn't treat them very well, all these poor people, and they kicked them out of the houses. And so 1 million of them boarded ships, and they came to the United States. And most of them went to work on the railroads. They were very important in building. They had a work song that they loved to sing called Paddy on the Railroad. It's got a great chorus. In 1841, I put me corduroy breeches on. I put me corduroy breeches on to work upon the railway. Fill-a-me-oory-oory-ay, 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 to work upon the railway. And that's your I love historical fiction. It's a way to read adventure and to learn at the same time. It puts you in the story. This is my favorite historical fiction book right here. I see somebody nodding her head. The True Confessions of Charlotte Doyle. And I like to tell about it because it's not just a great adventure. It's a book about how do we decide how we think about people and think about whether they're good or bad people. This is a story about a girl named Charlotte Doyle who comes from a rich American family. Her father is part owner of a ship company, and she is sent from England to the United States on board that ship. It's a merchant ship. It's not a passenger ship. There were 2 other families supposed to go with her so she'd have company, but the others back out, and she's the only passenger and the only girl on this ship. Naturally, she's kind of afraid, and especially since her father has told her to mistrust people who are poor and who are sailors, but tells her that Captain Jaggery, the captain, he's a rich man, he's a strong man, and she can trust him. Well, you'll notice in this version of the book, she's dressed nicely as she was when she left. In this version of the book, it's really the same words. They just chose a different part to use for the cover. You'll notice she's dressed as a sailor. Well, what happened? How did she turn from a rich girl on a voyage into that sailor? And you'll notice in this one, the rich girl is carrying a knife behind her back because she's scared that one of those sailors might attack her. But the danger doesn't come from them. It comes from Captain Jaggery, who accuses her of murdering the first mate of the ship and puts her on trial to be hung. If you want to find out what actually happens, then read the book. But what happens in this book is you see the way a girl begins with a certain mindset that all the poor people are bad and all the rich people are good. And she begins to understand that you can't decide who's good and bad based on that. Story about a man who mailed himself to freedom in a box, Henry's Freedom Box, a true story. I Survived series, raise your hand if you've read the I Survived series. Lots of fun books in that, pretty easy to read, about a third grade level. The American Girls series. Some of the books I love are funny stories. This is about the fools of hell and how dopey they are. These are the wise men. They never can figure anything out. Okay, there's Juan Bobo from Puerto Rico. He's very silly. Maybe you like Dave Pilkey. Before he did any of the Captain Underpants, he did the Dragon books, which are wonderful. They're not kind of as crazy, but they're really fun. Lunch Lady. Now that's crazy. Raise your hand if you've read Lunch Lady. Okay. That's a great graphic novel series. And of course, Diary of a Lumpy Kid. And tell you a story that comes from there. The song is called Mi Casa es Su Casa. What does that mean? Who can tell me what that means? What does that mean? My house is your house. That's right. It's a way of welcoming somebody. It's like saying, make yourself at home. Feel like you're at home. My house is your house. In this song, the woman who wrote it, Michelle Valerie, is kind of telling about her adventures when she traveled throughout Latin America. And she found that every place she went, the people were so nice to her. And most of them were poor people. They might have only one chair in their house, but they would say, sit down in that chair. They might have one Coca-Cola in the refrigerator. They'd give her that. If she stayed the night, they'd give her the one mattress. They were so nice to her, she wanted to write a song about her. But because she was writing for kids, she thought it'd be fun to make it animals instead of people who were inviting her in. The first animal who invites her in is an anaconda. She's floating down the Amazon River. Now, really, you wouldn't want an anaconda to invite you home. Not a real anaconda. But this is a pretend song, okay? And then she's hiking in the Andes Mountains with a Quechua guide. That's a Quechua Indian. They lived there a long time before the Spanish ever came over with a Quechua guide. And there was an Inca ruin. That's the old city of Machu Picchu, okay, on the mountainside. And there was a llama or a llama right there, big, fuzzy.
Casa es su casa, help me whenever you are near. Mi casa es su casa, sit down and rest right here. Well, I was hiking in the Andes with a Quechua guide. It was an Inca ruin on the mountainside. And standing in the shadow of a temple wall, there was a friendly llama. She was 8 feet tall, and she said, Mi casa es su casa, whenever you are near. Mi casa es su casa.
My wife is from Colombia in South America, and I used to go down and visit her. See, there we are, right there. And our daughter, Ana Maria, who's now 23 years old. There I am in Venezuela and down in Costa Rica in the rainforest. They have some beautiful, beautiful butterflies down there. And I'm going to tell you a butterfly story that I learned from this man, Joe Hayes. It's in this book. Tell me a cuento, cuéntame un story. It's about a mariposa, a butterfly, who goes out, or in some cases a cucarachita, a little cockroach, who goes out and finds some money and makes a dress. She dresses up, and all kinds of animals come by and ask her to marry them. Here's a wonderful version that's become very popular called Martina, the Beautiful Cockroach, and this is a Cuban version of the story written by Carmen Agradidi. There's another great historical novel, Esperanza Rising, about a rich Mexican girl. The family loses all their money and they have to come and work as migrant workers in the United States. And she rises to the occasion, learns to stop being a spoiled rich kid and to get her hands dirty and to go to work.
Anybody know who Cesar Chavez is? Have you read about him in history classes? Very good. He's one of my heroes. He's kind of the Hispanic equivalent of Martin Luther King. He led the United Farm Workers and pick all the fruit and vegetables that we eat that come from the West and help them organize so that they would be treated decently. And that's him leading a very famous march where he started out on a 400-mile march with 14 people to the capital of Sacramento to demand the right to bargain as a union. And when he got to the capital, they had grown to 10,000 different people. And the company signed a contract.
But you got to be careful with these. These are very sharp, so be careful how you use them. I don't want to hear that, you know, somebody was in the hospital because Mr. Sundell made them a sword and they accidentally cut off their sister's arm or something like that. They aren't fun. And there it is. There's a pirate sword for you. Really quickly. Here's my favorite one, though, Edward and the Pirates. Not quite as funny, but kind of funny in a quiet way. You see, Edward loved to read, and when he would read, he would feel like he was right in the story. That's one of the great things about reading. While he'd read about Joan of Arc, that he was defending her, he'd read that he was sliding down the rope to help out Robin Hood. Yeah. And one day he was over at the library and there were some men watching him. He didn't see them. What kind of men were they?
Pirates.
They were pirates, exactly. And that night they showed up in his bedroom. And you know what they wanted? They wanted his book. He had a book about buried treasure. They said, "Come on, give us your book." He said, He said, "I checked that out of the library with my library card. You want that book, go to the library and check it out yourself." Well, they said, "Listen, we'll give you some buried treasure if you let us have that book." Nothing doing. They said, "Listen here, you're going to have to walk the plank if you don't give us that book." Pirate captain pulled out his sword. He said, "You better watch it, you're going to wake my mommy." Sure enough, in comes his mom, looking a lot like Joan of Arc, and pins those pirates right against the wall. Ooh, that little boy felt sorry for him. He says, "Mommy," he said, "I don't think it really meant anything." He said, "They just want this book. Here, I'll tell you what." He says, "Okay, I'll let you borrow it for a little bit if you bring it back to me." Well, he hands it over to the pirate captain. The pirate captain takes that book and he kind of turns to the rest of the pirates and they kind of get in a huddle and they talk for a minute. And then the pirate turns around and he hands that book back to Edward. "You can't read," he says. They can't read. So Edward, being a nice guy, he reads the book to him. His parents say, "Now don't stay up too late. Make sure you don't stay up too late." I guess she's not scared of those pirates. They're just storybook pirates anyway. They won't do much harm. And that's the story of Edward and the Pirates. What do you think? I like it too. It's one of my favorite books. But now, of course, you older kids, and maybe some of you younger ones, know that real pirates weren't quite as nice as the pirates in those books. They attacked a lot of ships and they stole stuff, and when they didn't give it to them real quick, they'd kill them and take it. One of the fiercest, maybe the fiercest, was Blackbeard. He was called Black because of that beard. And if you look close, you'll see this smoke coming out of his head. What he used to do to look scary was he put some slow-burning fuses into his beard. This is a true story. And when he would be attacking, people would see this crazy guy with smoke coming out of his head. And the idea was they'd surrender quicker, right? And they often did. He finally
got killed when Lieutenant Robert Maynard went after him. They threw his body overboard, and the legend says that he was so mean his body swam around that ship 3 times before it sunk. Blackbeard the pirate. These are fairy tales, and we may think of fairy tales in terms of movies that have been made by Walt Disney. But the original ones of these fairy tales are often very gritty. What tale is this? Rapunzel. And that one is Red Riding Hood. And what about that one? Sleeping Beauty. Like Rumpelstiltskin. But nowadays there are some wonderful chapter books that are written based on it. Rump is a wonderful story. It's a little boy, and when his mother was dying, she was giving birth to him, and they asked, what's his name? And she says, his name is Rump. And she died. So his name was Rump, and everybody teased him. They said Rump, because you know this is a rump right here. So they were always teasing him. It's a wonderful story. There's Hansel and Gretel, and here's a wonderful series if you like bloody books. There's that strings together a bunch of those stories, A Tale Dark and Grim. Whatever After, great reads for third graders. A brother and sister fall through a mirror into different fairy tales, and they kind of mess things up when they arrive, and the book consists of them trying to straighten it out. This is about the funniest book of a twisted or a fractured fairy tale, The Stinky Cheese Man, based on the Gingerbread Man. And here's the one I want to tell you a little about. It's called The Six Swans. There was once a queen who had 6 sons, but what she wanted more than anything else in life was a daughter. And one day, she was looking out the window and she saw a mother and a daughter walking along. And they looked so happy. They were talking to each other. They were laughing. Without thinking, really, she said to herself out loud, oh, if I only had a daughter, I would give my 6 sons. Well, she should have thought about that, because 2 seconds later, an old woman appeared in the room before her, and she said, that's a terrible thought. So you learn a lesson for him. I will grant your wish for you. I will give you a daughter, and on the day that your daughter is born, you will lose your 6 sons. And so she said that she wanted all of her sons gathered round her on the day that she gave birth. They all needed to be in the room with her, and she wanted all the doors guarded. There was a sound of wind, and the wind pushed open the window and came roaring through, and she looked up to see 6 swans flying out that window. And she looked to where her sons had been, and they were gone. You know about fables that teach a lesson? Well, there's lots of wisdom tales. Here's China and Japan, a lot of them over in Asia. And this one's called The Empty Pot. And it's about a boy who loves to garden. You've read that? Wonderful. How many of you read this? Okay, well then I won't even tell you about it. Yeah, but you tell me, when that boy was supposed to make the most beautiful flower that he could out of the seed, what happened?
Nothing. There was nothing.
There was nothing there, so did he make a flower out of another seed?
No.
No, and who became the emperor? He did. He wasn't really looking for the most beautiful flower, he was looking for a person who was honest. And there I am at my friend Wagatsama's house way up in the country. Does that look like me? It doesn't, but that's me 50 years ago. That's me in 1970, 48 years ago. And I'm smashing some soybeans. And that's a little neighborhood festival. They're doing an old dance with those strange masks on, and a woman and her baby in the crowd watching them. That's my friend Wagatsuma with me. We're at Deer Park. The deer are tame. There are many beautiful, beautiful parks there. And there I am in the Japanese Alps, and I stayed in a little cabin overnight and talked with that girl in Japanese with my dictionary. Met lots of friendly people there. It's wonderful to travel around to different countries and cultures, and you know, if you can't do it yourself, taking a plane or a train, you know how you can do it? Come to the library and read a book.